It's a state where coal is big. And for those folks who worry about the coal industry and the income that they earn, the jobs that they have from that industry, much of what Al Gore has said is threatening to them.
That's right.
Rightly or wrongly.
Gore
has
used the environmental issue in his book, Earth and the Balance, to appeal to soccer moms who are very concerned about the environment, suburban voters, and also, of course, to help fend off the threat from Ralph Nader. But we're seeing in West Virginia there can be a downside to that strong environmentalism.
This ground war is just a marvel to think that at 7:32 Eastern Time, CNN cannot call Ohio, which, as you indicated, is a Republican must. It's been a tradition. We can't call other states, West Virginia. This is a marvel.
I think what Bill Schneider said, I guess it's 2.5 hours ago, I think we'll be talking about this for hours, that this is a country fundamentally divided on two of the central premises of any election. Is it time for a change, or do you want to stay the course? And this country appears to be, on issue after issue, so far, cutting it right down the middle.
And Governor Bush's father, George Herbert Walker Bush, said that he thought the reason why he lost to Bill Clinton was that the American people wanted a change. And not surprisingly, former President Bush says he believes in this instance tonight on this election 2000, the American people want a change and will elect his son.
Some kind of change, maybe not, maybe prosperity they want to continue. They want to change in style of leadership. Maybe they want to change in values, which is something that George W. Bush, the son, talked a lot about during the campaign.
What we're finding is a remarkable number of Americans, 50%, sometimes more in some states.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. I'm getting some information. CNN now declares that Governor Bush has won another state in the South. This one, Georgia, and its 13 electoral votes.
Expected, and that is an important win for Governor Bush.
And it illustrates what we were pointing out. The fact that we say a state is too close to call doesn't necessarily mean that the state is really in play or it's 50-50. It simply means at that moment we can't do it. Georgia is a state that President Clinton contested, actually carried it in one of his...
in 92, by 1 percentage point.
Right, and then lost it by a couple. But it is certainly no shock that these southern states ought to be falling like dominoes for George W. Bush. I mean, ever since the Civil Rights Revolution of '64, the South has been a state that's very hard for Democrats to win, and you've got to be from the South or a border state to do it. Carter, Clinton.
This is how our electoral map looks at 7:34 Eastern Time. Governor Bush far ahead of Vice President Gore, 54 electoral votes to 3 so far. And the yellow you see, wherever you see yellow on our electoral map, that means that that state in particular is too close to call.
One of those states, Bernie, too close to call, Ohio. We've been saying, of course, all the polls that were done leading up to this election showed it was going to be pretty comfortably in George W. Bush's corner, but it's also a state that Bill Clinton won narrowly 2 times in 1992 and 1996.
That's right.
So it's even though we said it's no Republicans ever won the White House without
Judy,
it.
Excuse me. This is. I know it sounds like I'm being rude, but we have a call to make, and it is a significant one. In the state of Virginia, former Governor George Allen has defeated and unseated Senator Charles Robb. Charles Robb, a 2-term senator, former governor, once thought to be possible presidential material, involved in various personal problems several years ago, barely beat Oliver North in a very hot race in '94. This time, George Allen has defeated him, and this represents a pickup, and a significant one, because it makes the Democrats' attempt to capture the Senate that much harder. Their most vulnerable incumbent has fallen.
And that means the Democrats have picked up a seat in the Senate in Florida. The Republicans have picked up a Senate seat by defeating Senator Robb in Virginia, so they're even Steven as of right now.
And since it's a 54-46 majority,
that's a good news for the
Democrats'
Republicans.
road got tougher.
Quite an upset there. Son-in-law, the late President Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Married to Linda Johnson.
Chuck Robb.
This is a race, of course, we see many of the ads because, 3 of us live in Washington, D.C. 1 of us lives in New York. You don't see as many of these.
The heartland.
Right, the heartland of America, Manhattan, West 57th Street.
Something.
And some of us were born in Virginia.
But we've been seeing a lot of the ads, and they've been some very tough ones in the Robb Allen race. There are many people who said that Chuck Robb in this campaign never really seemed to many people like he wanted it. Now, I'm not comfortable saying that from here, but I think it was something that the analysts
well, remember, Virginia has become more and more solidly Republican over the years, and I mean, the legislature is predominantly Republican. Now they have 2 Republican senators. The governor has been Republican for some time. Virginia has been one of the southern states that's really drifted into the GOP.
And I think it's fair to say that in 1994, it was often said that Rob and Oliver North were each running against the only person they could conceivably beat that year. And in fact, now that Chuck Robb has faced a stronger incumbent, remember in '94 there was an independent Republican that ran against North with the blessing of the other Senator John Warner. This time the Republicans were united and they took it.
Well, since we have some electoral goodies on the table, let's reset the table and take a look at how the balance of power is shaping up at this hour on Capitol Hill. And Wolf Blitzer's here in our election night newsroom to keep us up to date. Wolf?
Bernie, with that Republican pickup in Virginia and the Democratic pickup in Florida, let's take a look at the new balance of power in the U.S. Senate. The numbers are as follows. Democrats, of course, need 5 in order to carry that, to become the majority in the U.S. Senate. We're waiting for those numbers. That's it. The numbers are even. There's no pickup right now because the Democrats have won 1 in the in Florida. The Republicans have won 1 in Virginia. No change so far. There are 2 Senate incumbents who have been reelected. We'd like to call those winners right now. Senator Mike DeWine of Ohio, the Republican, reelected over Ted Celeste. Robert Byrd, the Democrat in West Virginia, the longtime senator, reelected in West Virginia. No great surprises in those 2 races, Stuart Rothenberg. But the Chuck Robb defeat in Virginia is somewhat of a surprise.
Two points. Well, first, in the Florida race, I think the Republicans knew McCollum was behind. They were hoping that he would slide through with getting a draft from George W. Bush. Obviously, that hasn't happened in Florida with the presidential race too close to call. And in Virginia, you know, that's a smaller version of the presidential race. George Allen, a former governor, talked about big government versus small government, very likable, personable guy. Chuck Robb said he could win this election on issues like guns and health care, education. Didn't work out that way. We'll have to see whether it works out that way at the presidential race.
Let's take a look at the House of Representatives, an important race in Kentucky. We're now ready to call Ann Northup the winner, the Republican, over Eleanor Jordan in a tough race. Why was this one so closely watched, Stuart Rothenberg?
Because the Democrats threw everything but the kitchen sink at Ann Northup. The AFL-CIO was in there very early, advertising very heavily, all Democratic groups. And Wolf, Democrats believe that they're going to have to knock off a handful of Republican incumbents if they're going to take over the House. They thought Ann Northup was in that group. They fell short there. In the balance of power in the House of Representatives, still no change, no pickups as of right now. The Republicans have won 12. The Democrats have won 8, 1 independent. It stays as it was before. Let's take a look at the gubernatorial race in North Carolina. We're now ready to call Mike Easley, the Democrat, re-elected over Richard Vinroot in North Carolina, and too close to call in West Virginia, Cecil Underwood, challenged by Bob Wise. These gubernatorial races, there are 11. Some of them do suggest some national implications. Oh, absolutely. Well, you can't talk about governors in terms of the balance of the power the way you can in the House and the Senate. But let's remember that governors appoint senators if there's a vacancy. We've had some of that recently. They're involved in redistricting and reapportionment, and could be involved in the 2004 presidential race. So governors matter. So as of right now, Stuart Rothenberg, if we look at the balance of power in the Senate, the House of Representatives, it's basically going as a lot of people, including yourself, had thought would be the case. At the moment, the election is a status quo election. There are plenty of contests to go. And in fact, for the Democrats in the House, they're looking toward the West Coast, California, Utah, Washington State for big wins there. So we have to wait till we get to a couple more time zones. Opportunities for 4 or 5 potential pickups in California alone for the Democrats. Right. Clearly, Kentucky has been a good state for the Republicans this year in the congressional races and the presidential. Let's look elsewhere. Stuart Rothenberg, we'll be back to you. Back to Bernie on the National Desk.
And our election night coverage will continue when we come back.
Leon Harris reporting here live from CNN Interactive, where tonight what we've done is we've constructed our website here in a way that's going to allow you to cover this very close election as it unfolds across the country in a very unique way. Go to our website at CNN.com, and what you'll find there is You Decide the States feature, where you get to pick which states you think Al Gore or George W. Bush will win. You select the state, you select the winner of that state. The colors will change, and you can compare it to the map on the right, which shows you the actual winners of the states. And in the end, you get the final tally and find out whether or not you were right. You don't win anything, except maybe a little pride. Now, back to the national desk for more coverage.
All right, sorry, we're so carried away with what's going on tonight. We want to talk about it with everybody. Hal Bruno is with us once again to take a look at some of those states that we can't call yet. Hal, over at your map.
Judy, let's take a look at two states that right now are too close to call. That's Ohio and West Virginia, and the battle within the battle for the Ohio River Valley. Now, let's take a look at Ohio first. The good news for George Bush in the early returns is that Al Gore is not doing as well as a Democrat has to do up in Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland. He's underperforming there. The worrisome news for George Bush is over here in Cincinnati, which is the Republican stronghold. Bush is not doing as well as he should do in the early returns. In order to win this state, the Republican has to be real strong in Cincinnati and all through central Ohio. The Democratic strength is up here in the north. Now let's take a look at West Virginia. You know what? West Virginia, 3 times in the last 50 years, it's voted Republican. It's the most Democratic state in presidential campaigns, but not tonight. It's still too close to call, but the bad news for Al Gore is down here in the coal mining regions in the Southwest. Al Gore is not running as well as a Democrat has to run. And the contrast is that George Bush so far is doing well over here in Huntington and in Charleston. Now, Bill Schneider was right on the money when he was talking about the economy versus the environment in West Virginia. Down here in the southwest part of West Virginia, that's where they do mountaintop mining. And the people down there were very concerned that Al Gore's environmental policies would hurt their economy. They also were concerned about his policies regarding Appalachian coal, which is high sulfur burning. Gore tried to explain he was going to penalize the power plants, not the mines. The other big fight in West Virginia was between the NRA and the United Mine Workers. The United Mine Workers is all out for Al Gore, but the NRA was fighting against that because the miners down in West Virginia, they like their guns and they like to hunt.
Hal, it sounds like you're describing exactly with real votes what our Bill Schneider was describing, that when you pull a union vote, you think you're pulling a Democratic vote, but if the social issues are bothering them, if the Democrats are on the wrong side from their point of view on the social issues, those union votes are going to be pulled and they're not going to vote for the Democrat. You think that's what's going on in the Southwest that you were pointing to?
It's exactly what's going on throughout the Ohio River Valley, Jeff, and it's not only the social issue, it's also that all-important economic issue of jobs. The same thing has happened in eastern Kentucky and to a certain extent down in southwest Pennsylvania. So that's why I call it the battle for the Ohio River Valley.
But Hal, I have to ask you, you know, this is a state that Bill Clinton won twice. Is there that much difference between how these people perceive Bill Clinton and Al Gore?
Yes, Judy, there is a big difference because with Bill Clinton, the environment was not the major issue that it's been for Al Gore throughout his political career. He is seen as the environmental man. And in West Virginia, that is causing a lot of worries. It's still a battleground. It's still too close to call, but there's no doubt that Al Gore has trouble there.
As part of that trouble, Al Bruno, the millions and millions of dollars thrown into this battle by the National Rifle Association.
And how? That's trouble with a capital T. As I said, the United Mine Workers Union went flat out for Al Gore in West Virginia, as it has in other states, Pennsylvania, for example. But the NRA was in there in force. I mean, Charleston Heston, Moses himself, was campaigning in West Virginia on the gun issue.
All right, Al Bruno, and there's much more we want to talk to you about tonight. I'm tempted to ask you about Ralph Nader and what he says about there's no difference between the candidates. We can save that for later. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Larry King with the man who ran on the Republican ticket for president 4 years ago, Bob Dole.